Just as Jesus shocked the world by embracing the outcast woman, Pope Leo XIV froze when he saw his childhood friend homeless on the streets. Without hesitation, he acted with the same mercy and courage Jesus showed, breaking all expectations and moving millions. This is not just a story of compassion, it's a revelation that will change how you see faith, friendship, and true leadership forever. Turn on subtitles to catch every powerful moment. Subscribe now and share your thoughts. Would Jesus have done the same? What would you do in Pope Leo XIV's place? The city was alive with anticipation. Crowds lined the streets, waving flags and holding up signs of hope as Pope Leo XIV's motorcade made its way through the heart of the city. Cameras flashed news anchors, narrated every move, and the world watched as the spiritual leader of millions greeted the people with warmth and humility. For many, it was just another historic papal visit, until a single unscripted moment changed everything. As the motorcade slowed near a bustling intersection, Pope Leo XIV's gaze seemed to drift from the sea of faces. For a brief instant he appeared distracted, almost searching for something or someone. Then suddenly he signaled for the car to stop. Security tensed, unsure of what was happening. The Pope's eyes locked onto a figure sitting quietly on the curb, wrapped in a worn blanket face shadowed by the brim of a weathered cap. It was a face he hadn't seen in decades, but one he could never forget. There, among the forgotten and the invisible, was his childhood friend, once a companion, in laughter and dreams, now a soul battered by the harsh realities of life. The years had changed them both, but the bond of memory was unmistakable. Without hesitation, Pope Leo XIV opened the car door himself and stepped into the street, ignoring the frantic calls of his aides and the stunned silence of the crowd. Every camera turned, every eye fixed on the unfolding scene. The Pope approached. The man knelt down beside him and gently lifted his friend's chin. Recognition flickered in the man's eyes, followed by disbelief, then overwhelming emotion. The world seemed to hold its breath as the Pope embraced his friend, holding him tightly in a gesture that shattered the barriers of protocol, status, and expectation. Tears streamed down both their faces. The crowd, at first confused, was soon swept up in the raw humanity of the moment. Many wept openly, others reached out to comfort those around them, and the city's noise faded into a sacred hush. What happened next would be replayed on screens across the globe. Pope Leo XIV, still kneeling, spoke softly to his friend, words lost in the noise of cameras and distant cheers, but the meaning clear in every touch and tear. He removed his own papal ring and placed it in his friend's hand, a symbol of brotherhood and dignity. He called for water, food, and shelter, ensuring his friend would be cared for, not as a charity case, but as a beloved brother. This was not a staged act, nor a calculated gesture for the media. Those who knew Leo XIV understood this was the essence of his faith lived out in real time. The Pope had always preached that every person, regardless of circumstance, carries the image of God and deserves love, respect, and a chance at redemption. In that moment, he embodied the very compassion he had so often called others to show. The images spread like wildfire. Social media erupted with hashtags, not just Pope, of the people, to true compassion, Leo XIV miracle. News outlets replayed the footage. Commentators struggled to describe the power of what they had witnessed. Theologians drew parallels to the gospel stories, especially the way Jesus embraced the outcast, the sinner, the forgotten. Many compared the Pope's embrace to Christ's encounter with the woman caught in adultery, or his healing touch for the leper and the blind beggar. For those present, the moment was transformative. "I saw the Pope become like Jesus," one witness said, voice trembling. He didn't see a homeless man, he saw his friend, his brother, he saw Christ. The friend, overwhelmed by the Pope's recognition and love, wept openly. Years of shame and isolation seemed to melt away in the warmth of that embrace. Later in an interview he would say, "For the first time in years I felt human again. I felt seen. Not as a problem, but as someone worthy of love." The Pope's security team, initially hesitant, quickly adapted. They helped provide immediate care for the man and coordinated with local shelters to ensure his long-term well-being. But Leo XIV insisted on more than just material support. He arranged for his friend to receive counseling, job training, and a safe place to stay. He visited him privately in the days that followed, sharing meals and memories and making sure his friend knew he was not alone. The world's response was electric. Messages of support poured in from every continent. People shared their own stories of lost friends, missed opportunities, and the longing for connection. Many were inspired to reach out to those in need in their own communities, organizing food drives, volunteering at shelters, and advocating for the homeless. Religious leaders from other faiths praised the Pope's example. "This is what true leadership looks like," said one prominent rabbi. "It's not about power or prestige, but about humility and love." A well-known imam commented, "In that embrace we saw the heart of God." The Vatican released a brief statement. Pope Leo XIV acted as a shepherd to all, especially to those who are lost or forgotten. His actions reflect the gospel call to love without limits. But for Leo XIV, it was never about headlines or accolades. In a homily the next Sunday, he spoke simply, "Each of us has someone we have forgotten, someone who needs us to see them, to remember them, to love them. Let us not walk past our brothers and sisters on the street. Let us be the hands and heart of Christ in the world." The story continued to ripple outward. The city where the encounter took place saw a surge in support for homeless services. Donations increased, volunteers signed up in record numbers, and local officials pledged new initiatives to address poverty and addiction. The Pope's friend, now surrounded by a network of care and hope, began to rebuild his life. He reunited with family, found meaningful work, and became an advocate for others still living on the margins. For the global church, the moment became a touchstone, a living parable of mercy, friendship, and the radical love at the heart of the Christian message. Seminaries and parishes used the story as a teaching tool, urging believers to move beyond comfort and convention to risk love in action. For millions watching the image of Pope Leo XIV kneeling in the street, arms wrapped around a forgotten friend, became a symbol of what is possible when faith becomes flesh, when words become deeds, and when the greatest power is found in humble service. This was not just a story about a pope and his friend. It was a call to every heart to see, to stop, to love. To remember that in the eyes of God, no one is ever truly lost. The world did not merely witness a touching reunion between Pope Leo XIV and his childhood friend. It witnessed a living parable, a moment that echoed through centuries of Christian tradition and resonated with the deepest yearnings of the human heart. As the images of the Pope's embrace circled the globe, theologians, believers, and ordinary people alike began to reflect on the profound symbolism of what had taken place. For many, the scene called to mind not just an act of kindness, but a radical reenactment of the compassion and boundary-breaking love that Jesus himself embodied. A mirror of the gospel. In the Gospels, Jesus is repeatedly shown reaching out to those whom society had cast aside: the lepers, the tax collectors, the prostitutes, the poor, and the sick. He does not simply preach about love and mercy, he enacts it often in ways that scandalize the religious authorities and shock the crowds. When Jesus kneels beside the woman caught in adultery, when he dines with Zacchaeus the tax collector, when he touches the untouchable, he is not only offering comfort, but also challenging the very structures that keep people isolated and ashamed. Pope Leo XIV's spontaneous act on the city street was for many a direct echo of these gospel moments. He did not pause to consider protocol, reputation, or even his own safety. He saw a suffering human being his friend and responded with immediate, unconditional love. In doing so, he broke through the invisible walls that separate us from them, the powerful from the powerless, the remembered from the forgotten. Breaking barriers like Jesus did. Commentators and clergy around the world drew clear parallels between the Pope's action and the ministry of Jesus. What we saw was not just charity, wrote one Catholic columnist, but a prophetic witness. Pope Leo XIV did what Jesus did. He made the invisible visible, the untouchable touchable, the unloved beloved. This was not lost on the faithful. In parishes and Bible study groups, people discussed how the Pope's embrace of his homeless friend mirrored Christ's embrace of the outcast. Some recalled the story of the Good Samaritan, where compassion is shown not by the religious elite, but by the one willing to cross the road to risk involvement, to see the suffering other as a neighbor and a brother. The Pope's act also challenged the Church itself. For centuries, the Church has taught the importance of charity and mercy, but too often these virtues are confined to words or institutional programs. Pope Leo XIV's example was a call to step out of comfort zones, to risk real encounter, and to embody the radical hospitality at the heart of the gospel. Mercy without limit. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of the Pope's action was its refusal to set boundaries on mercy. He did not ask his friend about his past, his failings, or his worthiness. He did not offer help from a distance or through intermediaries. Instead, he knelt in the dust, embraced his friend, and shared his own dignity and resources. It was a mercy that did not calculate, did not judge, and did not hesitate. This unconditional mercy is at the core of Jesus' message. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful, Jesus commands, Luke 6:36. Pope Leo XIV's act showed the world what this looks like in practice, a love that crosses every boundary, that risks scandal, that refuses to let shame or social status define a person's worth. A challenge to the world. The symbolism of the moment was not lost on the watching world. For many, it was a challenge, a question posed to every viewer, believer or not. Who are the friends we have forgotten? Who are the people in our own cities and neighborhoods that we pass by unseen and unloved? The Pope's action was a reminder that compassion is not a matter of grand gestures, but of seeing and responding to the needs right in front of us. Social commentators noted that the Pope's embrace was not only about personal friendship, but about the universal call to solidarity. In a world increasingly divided by wealth, race, religion, and ideology, the image of the Pope kneeling beside a homeless man was a radical statement. Every person has infinite value, and every life is worthy of love and care, inspiring a new wave of compassion. The impact of the Pope's act rippled outward. Churches and charities reported a surge in volunteers and donations. People who had long felt disconnected from faith or from the Church found themselves moved by the Pope's example. If the Pope can do this, one young woman wrote on social media, maybe I can too. Many religious leaders, both Catholic and from other traditions, used the moment as a teaching tool. Sermons and talks focused on the need to move beyond words to action, to make mercy visible and tangible. In schools, teachers discussed the story with students, asking them to reflect on how they could show kindness and inclusion in their own lives. A living parable for our time. The story of Pope Leo XIV and his childhood friend became for many a living parable, a modern retelling of the Gospel's most challenging teachings. It was a reminder that holiness is not about separation from the world, but about deep engagement with its pain and its people. It was a call to see Christ not only in the sanctuary, but in the streets, the shelters, and the faces of those we are tempted to overlook. For the Pope himself, the act was simply the natural outflow of his faith. In a later interview, he explained, Jesus taught us to love without counting the cost. My friend was suffering. I could not walk by. In his face, I saw not only my childhood companion, but the face of Christ. Theological reflections and global conversations. Theologians and scholars reflected deeply on the event. Some saw in the Pope's action a powerful affirmation of the Church's mission in the modern world, a mission not of power or privilege, but of humble service and radical inclusion. Others noted how the Pope's embrace challenged not only the Church, but all people of goodwill to examine their own hearts and actions. In interfaith dialogues, the story was cited as an example of the universal values of compassion and solidarity. Leaders from Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and other traditions praised the Pope's example, noting that every faith tradition calls its followers to see the divine in the suffering other, a legacy of hope and inclusion. As the days passed, the story continued to inspire new acts of kindness. People wrote letters to estranged friends and family members. Community leaders launched initiatives to support the homeless and the marginalized. Artists created paintings, songs, and poems capturing the moment's beauty and challenge. For many, the image of Pope Leo XIV kneeling in the street became a symbol of hope, a sign that even in a world marked by division and despair, love can break through mercy, can surprise, and friendship can be renewed. The moment Pope Leo XIV knelt beside his childhood friend on the city street did not end with the embrace. It was only the beginning. As the world watched, the story began to reverberate through every layer of society, touching hearts, sparking debates, and inspiring a wave of compassion that few could have predicted. Immediate public reaction: tears, silence, and applause. In the minutes following the Pope's embrace, the crowd that had gathered for a routine papal procession was transformed. People who had come to catch a glimpse of a distant spiritual leader suddenly found themselves witnesses to an act of raw humanity. Many wept openly, moved by the Pope's vulnerability and the visible pain and relief on his friend's face. Some reached out to comfort each other, strangers united by the power of the moment. As the Pope helped his friend to his feet and spoke quietly with him, a hush fell over the crowd. Then, as the two men embraced once more, a wave of applause swept through the street, spontaneous, heartfelt, and sustained. It was as if the entire city, for a brief moment, had become a single community united by empathy and hope. Viral impact: the world watches. Within hours, video clips and photographs of the encounter flooded social media. Hashtags like Pope of the People, the Mercy in Action, and Leo XIV embraced trended globally. People from every continent shared their reactions, some in awe, some in tears, many expressing gratitude for a public figure who dared to break protocol for the sake of love. News outlets scrambled to cover the story. Major networks interrupted regular programming to broadcast the footage, and headlines around the world captured the spirit of the event: Pope Leo XIV's shocking act of mercy, a modern-day parable. Unfolds on city streets, the Pope who became like Jesus. Editorials praised the Pope's courage and humility, while op-eds reflected on the deeper meaning of his actions. Church response: inspiration and introspection. Within the Catholic Church, the Pope's act was met with a mixture of admiration, inspiration, and soul-searching. Bishops and priests around the world referenced the event in their Sunday homilies, calling on the faithful to follow the Pope's example and to see Christ in the faces of the poor and forgotten. Cardinal Maria Rossi, a senior Vatican official, spoke to reporters. What we witnessed was not just a gesture, but a message to the Church, that our mission is not only in words, but in deeds. Pope Leo XIV has reminded us that the heart of Christianity is mercy, and that mercy must always be lived, not just preached. Religious orders and lay movements echoed this sentiment, launching new initiatives to serve the homeless and marginalized. Catholic schools and universities organized discussions and service projects inspired by the Pope's example. In seminaries, the story was used as a case study in pastoral theology, challenging future priests to consider what it means to be a shepherd in the modern world. Ecumenical and interfaith reactions. A universal message. The impact of the Pope's act was not limited to the Catholic community. Leaders of other Christian denominations, as well as Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, and secular voices, expressed admiration for the Pope's courage and compassion. Many noted that the embrace transcended religious boundaries and spoke to universal values of empathy, dignity, and solidarity. A prominent Protestant pastor remarked, "This is what the world needs to see from its spiritual leaders, not just doctrine, but love in action." An imam in Istanbul commented, "In that moment, the Pope showed the true spirit of Abrahamic faiths, compassion for the stranger, the poor, and the forgotten." Media analysis, debates, and reflections. As the story continued to unfold, media analysts and commentators debated the significance of the event. Some focused on the symbolic power of the Pope's action, seeing it as a challenge to world leaders to prioritize the needs of the vulnerable. Others discussed the political and social implications, noting that the Pope's embrace had drawn attention to the issue of homelessness and poverty in a way that no policy speech could have done. Talk shows and podcasts featured interviews with theologians, social workers, and people who had experienced homelessness themselves. Many spoke of the need for systemic change, while others emphasized the importance of personal connection and compassion. Ripple effects, acts of kindness, and policy shifts. The most immediate and tangible impact of the Pope's act was a surge in acts of kindness and generosity. In the city where the encounter took place, local charities reported record numbers of volunteers and donations. Soup kitchens, shelters, and outreach programs saw an influx of support from people inspired by the Pope's example. Elsewhere, individuals and families took to the streets to offer food, blankets, and companionship to those in need. Social media was filled with stories of reconciliation, estranged friends and family members reaching out to one another, inspired by the Pope's willingness to cross boundaries for the sake of love. At the policy level, city officials announced new initiatives to address homelessness and poverty. Inspired by the Pope's call to action, they pledged to invest in affordable housing, mental health services, and job training programs. Non-profit organizations formed new partnerships, and businesses offered resources and employment opportunities to those seeking a fresh start. A lasting conversation. What does it mean to love? As days turned into weeks, the story of Pope Leo XIV and his friend remained a topic of conversation. In classrooms, workplaces, and homes, people asked themselves difficult questions. Who are the people we overlook? What risks are we willing to take for the sake of compassion? How can we move from words to deeds? Churches and community groups organized forums and workshops on the themes of mercy, inclusion, and social justice. Artists created murals and music inspired by the encounter. Writers and poets reflected on the meaning of friendship, forgiveness, and the possibility of transformation. Personal stories, testimonies of change. Perhaps the most powerful reactions came from those whose lives were directly touched by the Pope's example. Homeless individuals shared stories of being treated with new respect and kindness. Volunteers spoke of finding new purpose in serving others. Families who had experienced loss or estrangement found hope in the possibility of reconciliation. One woman who had been estranged from her brother for years wrote in an open letter, "When I saw the Pope embrace his friend, I realized how much I missed my own. I called my brother that night. We talked for hours. Thank you, Pope Leo, for reminding me that love is always possible." The Pope's own words, a call to action. In the days following the event, Pope Leo XIV addressed the world in a televised message. He spoke simply but with conviction. Let us not be afraid to love. Let us not be afraid to see the suffering of others and to respond with open hearts. Every person we meet is our brother or sister. Let us be the hands and heart of Christ in the world. He encouraged people to reach out to those in need, to listen, to serve, and to forgive. The world will not change through power or wealth, he said, but through the simple acts of love and mercy that each of us can offer. Conclusion: the power of one act. The ripple effect of Pope Leo XIV's shocking act continues to spread. What began as a single moment of compassion on a city street has become a catalyst for personal and social transformation. The world has been reminded that true leadership is not about status or ceremony, but about humility, courage, and the willingness to love without limits. For the Church, for the community, for the world, the message is clear. One act of mercy can change everything. One embrace can heal old wounds. One leader's example can inspire millions to see, to serve, and to hope. And as the story of Pope Leo XIV and his friend continues to inspire, it calls each of us to ask, what act of love will we choose today? The embrace between Pope Leo XIV and his childhood friend was more than a fleeting headline or a viral video. It became a catalyst for profound and enduring change within individuals, communities, and institutions across the globe. The ripple effects of that single act of compassion extended far beyond the city street where it began, touching lives, shifting perspectives, and inspiring a new movement of mercy and solidarity. a surge in social action and volunteerism. In the immediate aftermath, communities everywhere experienced a surge in volunteerism and social engagement. Inspired by the Pope's example, thousands of people, many of whom had never volunteered before, signed up to serve at homeless shelters, soup kitchens, and outreach programs. Local charities reported record numbers of donations, not only of money, but also of food, clothing, and time. Schools and universities launched service learning projects encouraging students to engage directly with the needs of their communities. Teachers used the story of Pope Leo XIV as a springboard for discussions about empathy, inclusion, and the responsibilities of citizenship. In many classrooms, students wrote letters to the homeless, organized clothing drives, and reflected on the importance of seeing the humanity in every person. Faith communities mobilize for change. Churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples responded to the Pope's example by redoubling their efforts to serve the marginalized. Catholic parishes expanded their outreach ministries, forming partnerships with local non-profits and government agencies to provide comprehensive support for the homeless. Interfaith coalitions formed to address root causes of poverty such as lack of affordable housing, addiction, and mental health challenges. Religious leaders preached about the transformative power of mercy, urging their congregations to move beyond charity to justice, to not only offer help, but also to advocate for systemic change. Many faith communities established mercy teams, groups dedicated to building relationships with those on the margins and advocating for their rights. Policy and institutional change. The impact of Pope Leo XIV's act was also felt at the level of policy and governance. City officials, moved by the global attention and local enthusiasm, began to re-examine their approaches to homelessness and poverty. In the city where the encounter took place, the mayor convened a task force to develop new strategies for supporting the homeless, including increased funding for shelters, expanded mental health services, and job training programs. Other cities and countries took note, launching their own initiatives to address homelessness and social exclusion. International organizations, inspired by the Pope's example, called for renewed commitment to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly those related to poverty, health, and social inclusion. The power of story media and the arts. The story of Pope Leo XIV and his friend became a touchstone for artists, writers, filmmakers, and musicians. Documentaries explored the deeper themes of friendship, redemption, and the power of a single act to change the world. Novels and poems were written inspired by the idea that no one is beyond hope and that love can bridge even the widest divides. Visual artists created murals and sculptures depicting the embrace, using public spaces to remind passers-by of the ongoing need for compassion and solidarity. Musicians composed songs that captured the spirit of the moment, and these works were performed at benefit concerts and community gatherings dedicated to supporting the homeless. Education and awareness campaigns, non-profits and advocacy groups seized the opportunity to raise awareness about homelessness, poverty, and social exclusion. Public service campaigns used the image of the Pope's embrace to challenge stereotypes and encourage empathy. Billboards, posters, and social media ads carried messages such as "See the person, not the problem, and compassion is contagious." Workshops and seminars were organized to educate the public about the root causes of homelessness and to equip volunteers with the skills needed to offer effective support. Many organizations reported an increase in people seeking to learn more about how they could help, not just with donations, but with their presence, their time, and their advocacy. Personal transformations. Stories of hope. Perhaps the most profound impact was seen in the lives of individuals. Many people who had previously felt invisible or hopeless found new courage to seek help and to believe in the possibility of change. Shelters and outreach workers reported an increase in people coming forward, inspired by the Pope's example, to take the first step toward rebuilding their lives. Formerly homeless individuals shared stories of being treated with new respect and kindness. "After the Pope's visit, people looked at me differently," one man said. "They saw me, not just my situation. That gave me hope." Others spoke of finding the strength to reconcile with family members, to pursue education or employment, and to become advocates for others still struggling. A new conversation. Dignity inclusion, and justice. The embrace sparked a broader conversation about the meaning of dignity, inclusion, and justice. Community forums, panel discussions, and online debates explored questions such as, what does it mean to truly see another person? How can society move beyond charity to create lasting change? What responsibilities do individuals and institutions have toward the most vulnerable? Many participants pointed to the Pope's act as a model for radical hospitality, the willingness to welcome and care for those whom society often overlooks. Others discussed the need for structural change, advocating for policies that address the root causes of poverty and exclusion. Lasting institutional legacy. The legacy of Pope Leo XIV's act was not limited to a single moment or city. Catholic institutions around the world established scholarship shelters and training programs in his honor. Foundations were created to fund innovative approaches to homelessness and social reintegration. Annual Day of Mercy events were launched, encouraging people everywhere to perform acts of kindness and solidarity. The Vatican itself announced new initiatives, including a global network of mercy centers dedicated to serving the homeless refugees and other marginalized groups. These centers provided not only material support, but also opportunities for education, spiritual growth, and community building. The Friend's Journey, from despair to advocacy. The Pope's childhood friend, whose life had been transformed by the embrace, became a symbol of hope for others. With the support he received, he rebuilt his life, reuniting with family, finding meaningful work, and eventually becoming an advocate for the homeless. He spoke at schools, churches, and conferences, sharing his story and encouraging others to see the humanity in every person. His journey inspired many who were struggling, showing that recovery and reconciliation are possible, no matter how dire the circumstances. "If the Pope could see me, then maybe others will too," he often said. "And if I can find hope, so can you." The lasting impact of Pope Leo XIV's act is measured not only in headlines or policy changes, but in the countless lives touched, the hearts opened, and the communities transformed. His example continues to inspire new generations to look beyond appearances, to break down barriers, and to choose compassion over indifference. As the years pass, the story of the Pope and his friend remains a living testament to the power of one act of love, a reminder that in a world hungry for hope, each of us has the capacity to make a difference. The embrace that shocked the world has become a legacy that endures, calling all people to see, to serve, and to believe in the possibility of redemption. As the world continued to buzz with the story of Pope Leo XIV's encounter with his childhood friend, many awaited his own words. What had he felt in that moment? Why had he acted as he did so, spontaneously and with such disregard for protocol? And what did he hope others would learn from what had happened on that unforgettable day? A papal address speaking from the heart. A week after the event, Pope Leo XIV addressed the world in a televised message broadcast from the Vatican. The setting was simple, no grand cathedral, just a modest chapel, sunlight streaming through stained glass, and the Pope seated quietly, hands folded, eyes gentle but resolute. He began by recalling the moment: "I did not expect to see my friend that day. I did not plan for it. It was not on any schedule. But when I saw him sitting alone, I recognized not only the boy I once knew, but the suffering that so many endure, often unseen. In that instant there was no pope, no title, no ceremony, only a brother seeing another brother in need." On friendship and human dignity, Pope Leo XIV spoke movingly about the power of friendship and the unbreakable bond of shared humanity. We are all travelers on the road of life. Some of us stumble, some lose their way, some are forgotten by the world, but no one is forgotten by God. No one is beyond hope. He reflected on the years that had passed since he and his friend were children. Time changes us, but love remembers. In my friend's eyes, I saw not only the past, but the possibility of a new future. I wanted him to know, and I want everyone to know, you are seen, you are valued, you are loved. On mercy and the example of Jesus, the Pope then drew a direct connection to the teachings and example of Jesus. The Gospels tell us that Jesus did not turn away from those whom others rejected. He ate with sinners, touched the lepers, wept with the grieving, and forgave those who had lost all hope. He saw the person, not the label. He saw the heart, not the circumstance. He continued. In that moment on the street, I tried to do what Jesus would do, to cross the distance that fear and pride create, to kneel in the dust, to embrace without judgment, to love without condition. A challenge to the Church and the world. Pope Leo XIV's words were not only reflective but also challenging. He called on the Church to move beyond comfort and custom, to risk real encounter, and to prioritize the needs of the most vulnerable. The Church is not a fortress but a field hospital. Our mission is not to guard our own safety but to bring healing to those who are wounded by life. He challenged world leaders, policymakers, and all people of goodwill. Do not measure success by power or wealth, but by the capacity to see and serve the least among us. Let us not walk past the suffering, but stop, listen, and act. The world will not be changed by speeches, but by the quiet courage of love. On breaking barriers and building bridges, the Pope addressed the divisions that plague modern society between rich and poor, native and immigrant, healthy and sick, believer and non-believer. We build too many walls and not enough bridges. We allow fear to dictate who is worthy of our attention and care. But the example of Jesus and the lesson of that day is that love knows no boundaries. Every person is our neighbor, every life is sacred. He called on all people to examine their own hearts. Who have you overlooked? Who waits for your compassion? What barriers can you break down? What bridges can you build in your own life? On hope and redemption. Pope Leo XIV spoke with particular tenderness about hope. No one is beyond redemption. No story is too broken to be healed. My friend's journey is not unique. There are millions like him, waiting for someone to see them, to believe in them, to offer a hand. He urged those who were struggling not to give up. If you feel lost, if you feel invisible, know that you are beloved. There is always a way home. There is always hope. A message to the marginalized. The Pope's address included a direct message to those on the margins, the homeless, the addicted, the lonely, the forgotten. You are not alone. The Church sees you, and more importantly, God sees you. Your life has meaning. Your pain matters. Do not be afraid to reach out for help. There are hands ready to lift you up, hearts ready to welcome you. He encouraged the faithful to be those hands and hearts. Let us be the Church that goes out, that listens, that serves. Let us be the friend who remembers, the neighbor who cares, the stranger who welcomes. On the power of one act, Pope Leo XIV reflected on the power of a single act of love. We often think that the world's problems are too big, that our efforts are too small. But every act of kindness, every gesture of mercy, every embrace of compassion sends ripples that reach farther than we can imagine. He recounted stories that had reached him in the days since the event of families reconciled, of strangers helping strangers, of communities coming together to serve the poor. This is how the world changes, one heart at a time, one act at a time. A call to action. The Pope concluded his address with a clear and urgent call to action. Do not wait for permission to love. Do not wait for someone else to act. Begin today wherever you are. See the person in front of you. Listen to their story. Offer what you can. Pray for the courage to cross the street, to kneel in the dust, to embrace the forgotten. He invited people of all faiths, and even those without faith, to join in the work of compassion. You do not need to be a pope, a priest, or a saint. You only need a willing heart. The world is hungry for love. Let us feed it. The spiritual legacy mercy as the heart of faith. In the days and weeks that followed, Pope Leo XIV's words were quoted in homilies, classrooms and community meetings around the world. His message became a touchstone for a renewed understanding of faith, not as a set of rules or rituals, but as a living relationship with God and neighbor expressed in acts of mercy and justice. Theologians and spiritual writers reflected on the Pope's emphasis on mercy as the heart of the gospel. He has reminded us, wrote one commentator, that Christianity is not about exclusion, but embrace, not about judgment, but grace. Personal reflections, the Pope's own heart. In a rare personal interview, Pope Leo XIV shared more about his own feelings. "I am not a hero," he said quietly. "I am a man who has made mistakes, who has needed forgiveness, who has been lifted up by others. My friend's pain reminded me of my own need for mercy. We are all beggars at the door of grace." He spoke of the burden of leadership, the loneliness that can come with high office, and the comfort he found in simple acts of friendship. In the end, what matters is not what we achieve, but how we love. That is the only legacy worth leaving. Conclusion: the enduring message. Pope Leo XIV's act and the words that followed have become part of the living memory of the Church and the world. His example continues to inspire, to challenge, and to comfort. The embrace that shocked the world has become a symbol of hope, a reminder that in every age the call to love remains the greatest and most urgent commandment. As the Pope himself said, "Let us love not in word or speech, but in deed and in truth, for in the end it is love alone that endures." The story of Pope Leo XIV and his childhood friend is more than a fleeting headline. It is a living testament to the power of compassion, the dignity of every human life, and the transformative ripple of a single act of love. In a world too often divided by fear, indifference, and judgment, his embrace reminds us that true greatness is found not in titles or ceremonies, but in the courage to see, to stop, and to love. His example calls each of us to look beyond appearances, to break through the barriers of habit and prejudice, and to reach out to those who are forgotten or alone. Whether in grand gestures or the quiet kindnesses of everyday life, we are all invited to be bearers of hope, agents of mercy, and builders of a more just and compassionate world. May the legacy of Pope Leo XIV's embrace inspire us to act with mercy, to walk humbly, and to believe always in the possibility of redemption and new beginnings for every person. For in the end, it is love freely given and bravely lived that changes lives and lights the way for generations to come.